Hello, everyone. I'm the chair for today's CFPR seminar. My name is Tan Fu Lin. I am an assistant professor at the Longitudinal School of Public Policy. And that means, as chair today, that I have the honor of introducing our speaker today, Dr. Wang Sheng, who is an assistant professor of sociology at the Sociology department. Dr. Huang, he holds a PhD in sociology from the University of Cambridge. And as you see from his introductory blurb in the poster, he has been widely published in some of the top journals in sociology. So some of the names that we see include the British Journal of Sociology, Demography, Social Science Research, Work, Employment, and Society. And there's more, actually, if you look at his profile. So we're so happy and honored today to have him here to join us to give talk about spousal flexible working arrangements on gender housework equality among heterosexual couples. Over to you, Dr. Huang.
Okay. So thank you so much, Pauline, for your introduction. Okay, so let me share the screen. Okay, hello everyone. So my today's presentation focuses on the flexible working arrangement and the gender household inequality. So flexible working arrangement are a very popular concept during the COVID-19. Actually, a lot of companies, organizations, they have provided various flexible working arrangement to employees in order to help them to achieve work and life balance. And so, for instance, at the university, and not only the staff members, but also the admin and a lot of other staff members, they're now working on the flexible way. But what is flexible working arrangement? So flexible working arrangement are the work options that permit flexibility in terms of three aspects. So the first is how much do you want to work? Then is when do you want to work, and where do you want to work? So then we can naturally distinguish between three types of flexible working arrangement. Yeah. So in terms of the type of flexibility, yeah. We can first have one option is called the reduced hour flexible working arrangement. So this kind of flexible working arrangement is different from the traditional part-time work in a way that that in the traditional part-time work, you don't have the opportunity to choose how much you want to work. But this kind of flexible working arrangement allow you to choose how much you want to work. For example, if you're working in a full-time job, then you are able to reduce your working hour to the part-time job. It also includes job sharing, which means that, for example, 2 to 3 persons, they can share the responsibility of one job. Or you can work only in certain terms, not for the whole year. Yeah. So this is the first type of FWA. And then we can also have a flexible time arrangement, which means that you're able to, for example, start or end your working hours in a flexible way. And alternatively, you can work, for example, compressed hours or analyzed hours. Which means that, for example, you may work very intensively and in the first several months, and then you may have a more time and a more rest time during the rest of the year. And finally, we have the flexible place arrangement, which mainly refers to teleworking and, for example, working from home. Yeah. So in total, we have these 3 types of flexible working arrangement. Although the boundaries between the 3 types of working arrangement are not very, very clear, but they can be theoretically distinguished and are widely investigated in previous literature. So in the previous research on flexibility, on flexible working arrangement and various outcomes, so they actually have a yield very mixed results. So I call this flexibility paradox. So on the positive side, and so there's this theory called job demand and control model, So basically, this model argues that so in the job where there are many demands, for example, you need to work long hours, or you need to have a lot of deadlines. So if the job can give you more control over your schedule, over your working pace, then you are able to you're able to address your demands in a more proper way. Yeah. So on the positive side, and there are a lot of research, so they use the theory of the job demand and control model, and they find that so the flexible working arrangement can offer employees more control over their schedule, and therefore can help them to achieve work-family conflict, to achieve work-family balance and avoid work-family conflicts, and therefore improve their mental health, well-being, as well as their work engagement and even productivity. Yeah, actually, actually a lot of research, also including some of mine, shows that the flexible working arrangement do improve employees' mental health for both men and women. And however, on the other side, so there's this theory called work-family border theory. So this theory argues that so the flexible working arrangement can actually blur the border between work and a family. I think most academics have the similar experience of this, is because we are working in a flexible way, and at many times we're not able to distinguish what is work and what is life. And so this means that sometimes we unconsciously do a lot of work, and so then work and life, they can have some spillover effects on each other. So sometimes at home we do a lot of overtime work, and we also can actually do a lot of housework unconsciously. So this kind of blood border between work and life can possibly intensify the work-family conflicts, and therefore undermine mental health as well as productivity. Yeah. So so this is from previous research. It shows that flexible working arrangement sometimes they can improve so people's mental health and reduce their work-life conflicts, but sometimes it may actually increase their work-family conflicts. However, one important research gap in previous research on the flexible working arrangement and the housework hours is that the previous research only used the individual level information. So this is especially important for housework hours, because housework hours is, in my view, is somewhat different from other variables such as mental health or productivity, in a way that housework usually involves the collaboration and the negotiation between husband and wife in the heterosexual couples. And therefore, in order to get a deeper understanding on the effects of flexible working on housework inequality, so it is very, very important to include information for both husband and wife in a couples. Then we can have a deeper understanding on the gender dynamics within the heterosexual couples in shaping the gender inequality in housework hours. Yeah. So then the key question of this work is to understand what are the consequences of husband and wife use of flexible working arrangement on gender inequality in housework within heterosexual couples. For instance, after COVID-19, maybe a lot of companies may continue to provide flexible working arrangement for their husband and the wife. And therefore, we are interested in knowing that whether, for example, husband use of flexible working arrangement can actually reduce the inequality. or wives' use of flexible working arrangement may increase the inequality. Yeah, and then we're not only interested in the housework hour as a whole, we're also interested in, for example, what kind of housework tasks. So there can be a lot of housework tasks, and it's very interesting that some some jobs, for instance, cooking, cleaning, washing, so they are traditionally regarded as the work for women. Of course, there are many other jobs. For example, doing repairing or doing some labor work. So they are certain housework tasks which are traditionally considered the work for men. Yeah. So we are interested in to know that whether the pattern may vary across different kinds of housework. Yeah. So so in order to answer these questions, we use a nationally representative panel survey. So this is called Understanding Society. So the United Kingdom Household Longitudinal Study. And we draw the data from wave 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, because these waves have consistent measures of flexible working arrangement. And so we restrict our samples to heterosexual couples who are either married or cohabitated and aged 18 to 65 who are employed. And we specifically exclude self-employed people because self-employment naturally involves some flexible working and is therefore very different from the standard employment. And yeah. And so because we're interested in housework inequality, yeah, so our dependent variable, first housework hours, so they are measured by ratio, share, and difference. And we also have some more specific housework, including shopping, cooking, cleaning, washing. So they are coded as binary variable. Yeah, because these work are usually conducted by women. Yeah, so here we code it as mostly wife or not. And there are some other housework such as gardening and a DIY. So they are usually conducted by men. So therefore they're coded as mostly husband or not. Yeah, so the key independent variable is the use of flexible working arrangement among couples. Yeah, so here we define it as at least one flexible working arrangement is used. And then we can naturally distinguish 4 categories. So, so the first category refers to a family where both men and women do not use any of FWAs. And the fourth category is a family where both use both use flexible working arrangement. And we also include some control variables, including age of husband and wife, marital status, presence of children, number of children, household income or personal income ratio, and a wave. Yeah, to analyze to answer our questions, we use fixed effects models. And for housework hour ratio share difference, we use linear fixed effects models. And for the binary outcome variables, we use logistic fixed effects models. Yeah, so let me first show some descriptive statistics. Yeah, so so let's look at this graph. And so we find that in this graph, it shows that housework hour ratio. We find that on average, so the housework hours of wives are on average about 3 times of their husband housework hours. And this gender inequality is more pronounced when only their wife use flexible working arrangement, and also slightly more pronounced when both use flexible working arrangement. And in terms of housework hour share, we find that women's housework hour roughly account for about, for example, 65 to 70% of the total housework hours. And again, so the women's inequality is again more pronounced when only wife or both use flexible working arrangement. Yeah, and this also applies to housework hour difference. We find that on average, women's housework hour is about 6 hours more than their husband housework hour, and this inequality is also more pronounced when only a wife use flexible working arrangement or both of them use flexible working arrangement. Yeah, and then we can look at more specific housework. Yeah, so we find that in terms of shopping, cooking, cleaning, and washing, women usually do most of the job, and then also some of the job are shared, and men only do a tiny percent of the work. Yeah, and we also find that women's inequality here are also slightly more pronounced when they use flexible working arrangement. Yeah, and in terms of gardening and DIY, so we find that this is mainly men's work, and here, so we do not find any inequalities. Yeah, so okay, so let's look at some formal models. Yeah, so here I conduct two-way fixed facts models. And so here the dependent variable is flexible working arrangement. As I mentioned, there are 4 categories. So the reference group is the family where both husband and a wife, they do not use flexible working arrangement. Yeah, so the first key message from this table is that we find that compared with a family where no one use flexible working arrangement, and if in a family only wife use flexible working arrangement, or both husband and wife they use flexible working arrangement, so women's inequality in terms of share ratio share difference are exaggerated, are intensified. Yeah, so so this is a very crucial results indicating that providing flexible working arrangement, especially only to women, and even if both husband and wife they use flexible working arrangement, so the women's inequality in housework hours are actually intensified. Yeah. However, on the other hand, we find that if only husband use flexible working arrangement, they do not change the gender inequality. And in other words, even if men use flexible working arrangement and their wife do not use, and this do not reduce their their wives' housework hour ratio share and the difference. Yeah. So then, if we look at more specifically certain types of housework, and we find that so if women's use of flexible working arrangement, so this can again intensify their housework hour inequality in shopping, cooking, cleaning, and washing. Yeah, so this is especially the case in cooking and washing. Yeah, and we found it very interesting that men's use of flexible working arrangement can only reduce their wife's burden in shopping. So this is very interesting, but we find it. So this pattern only applies to certain housework, only to shopping, but not to the working, cleaning, and washing. Yeah. So yeah, and then we find that in terms of the gardening and the DIY, we find that wives' use of flexible working arrangement can, to some extent, reduce their husband's job on DIY. Yeah, and also we find that the use of flexible working arrangement among couples is not related to gardening. Yeah, so this is the overall results. Yeah. So to summarize the key message from all this statistical analysis, so the key message is that within heterosexual couples, women's use of flexible working arrangement can further intensify their already disproportionate housework hours. So, and this is especially the case for some traditionally feminine types of housework, such as cooking, cleaning, and washing. So this is very clear. And on the other hand, for men, we find that even men use flexible working arrangement alone, and they do not give any helps to reduce their wife's housework hour burden. Yeah. So the only exception is that men, if they use flexible working arrangement, they may do more shoppings. Yeah. So this is only one exception. And I've conducted some further analysis, which shows that this gendered pattern or gendered effect of flexible working arrangement mainly applies to the reduced hour and home working arrangement instead of the flexible time arrangement. Yeah. So in other words, if we're looking at the flexible time arrangement, so this has so they are not related to the gender inequality, and only reduced hour and only working from home arrangements. So this kind of two arrangement can help intensify women's inequality in household. Inequality in housework hours. Yeah. So then I would like to propose some possible explanations. I think the first possible explanation for the gender effect of flexible working arrangement is that a different purpose of the flexible working arrangement for men and women, because a lot of previous research shows that actually we can distinguish two kinds of flexible working arrangement in terms of its purpose, because some flexible working arrangements, so they are solely used for household responsibilities. So, and women tend to take most of this kind of flexible working arrangement to, to do housework, to give caring for their child or elderly people. Yeah. But on the other hand, men tend to use flexible working arrangement in a very different way. For example, a lot of men, they use flexible working to attend business activities or to meet clients. And so they tend to use this flexible working in order to improve their career opportunities. And in many cases, when men use flexible working arrangement, they do not stay at home. So they can either attend training, activities, conferences. So this so I think this is possible explanation. And alternatively, we can also attribute this pattern to the persistent so the traditional gender ideology of, especially of men. So in the recent decades, although we have implemented a lot of work family policies at the workplace. So, and we have also find many workplace strategies have dramatically changed to facilitate to facilitate work family balance for women. But so the gender ideology at home has not changed enough. So it is maybe because that even men use non-work related flexible working arrangement, and even if they stay at home, and they still contribute very little to the housework. And and I really hope that you can give some comments. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Huang. I see we already have a raised hand.
Okay.
So let's begin with Prof. Chua and Vincent.
Hi, hello, yeah.
Hi, sorry, I having to turn on my mic. So thanks so much for the presentation. I have a question that
Yes.
you know when we talk about gender norms and relations as well as dynamics, we know it varies by class.
Yes, yeah.
So my question is this, that, you know, for the flexible working arrangements, when only the wife uses it, that is positively associated with the ratio of the housework, especially with regards to three things, right? So the cooking and cleaning and washing.
Yes.
But I think that one potential hypothesis is that this relationship may be attenuated or reduced in higher SES couples.
Yeah.
So might it be that, yes, you know, flexible working arrangements may increase women's housework, but in families that with high SES, that the positive effects may not be as great as families where it's more traditional.
Yes.
So yeah, can you say something about the possibilities that class may modify the relationship between gender and the housework? Thanks.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question. And traditionally, many flexible working arrangements, they're only available in high-class occupations. But now, especially after COVID-19, a lot of companies, regardless of their occupation class, provide flexible working arrangement. And yeah, so there are some research shows that people from higher class, so for example, they pay more attention to the parenting. So it's called intensive parenting. So, and yeah, so they can possibly, and also in this high class, actually there is more pronounced gender inequality, and especially between men and women, because it's so it is a common phenomenon in the so in a very high class family, a man usually work extremely long hours, and then women usually choose to quit their job and to take their family and the children. Yeah, so I think so. I definitely agree with your hypothesis, and yeah, if I have a chance, I would definitely to test the moderation effect. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Senhu.
Myself. Sorry, we have a couple of raised hands, and just to keep the conversation to be more kind of well organized, does either of Nanxun or Mu Zhe, do you have a question more related to the question of SES? If so, maybe you can speak first, and then.
Yeah, I think I have a question also on SES. Nanxun, how about you?
Oh, no, my question is not that related to SES. Yeah, Prof, you may go first.
Okay, then I will go first, and thank you. And so, yeah, I think my question it's related to Vincent's point, but still different in that I'm more curious about this like gendered pattern of earning power. So now basically this working hours, it's like indicative of, for example, the potential income, but still it's different, right? And so sometimes, for example, if it's for example, the wife or the husband is like really at the corporate level, and like hold a like large amount of stocks of the company or so on, and so definitely can pick up like a flexible work hours, but still in terms of earning power, they still like assume the role as a primary like bread earner of the family. And so I'm wondering like how would this relationship between like working hour arrangements and division of labor will differ like across the actual like earning contributions of the husband and wife, and to what extent that, for example, if the wife is really financially successful and much more successful than the husband, how would that like remedy this gender dynamics? And Pauline, is that okay? I just ask all my questions, or I ask other questions later?
Again, I'm muted. Sorry. Yeah. I think that Dr. Ho, sorry, Senhu, do you prefer one question at a time, or do you want to take all?
Yeah, I just ask all, and
okay,
then Senhu can decide. Right. And so my second question is that I think also mentioned by Senhu's presentation, as well as mentioned by Vincent, is parenting, right? And so it's such a pity that it didn't show like how the relationship can pan out differently for childcare or education of children, and to some extent that like the chores can be considered to be relatively tedious and not so meaningful tasks, but education of children still, especially in high social class families, involves lots of like a fatherhood involvement. And so I'm wondering, like, are you planning to conduct some research in that direction, and why you decided to exclude childcare from the picture? And my third question is that I see that you have basically accounted for division of housework through two pathways. First, of course, is about the division of total hours of housework, right? And so ratio difference. And secondly, you also look at the task specific like division of labor. So actually these two may actually speak to like a third dimension of differences. That is, sometimes the division happens not across the total hours or across the task specific hours, but actually across tasks. And so, as you also mentioned, that some tasks are considered to be more masculine, some others are considered to be feminine. And so it is possible that, for example, like the husband think that they have already assumed lots of roles, of manual work, and so they just skip those other work. And so I'm wondering, is that possible, for example, to also look at the division of labor across number of tasks done? Yeah, that's all my question. Thank you very much for this very interesting talk.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so in terms of the first question actually in the model I have controlled for the total household income and also the personal income ratio. And actually I did some preliminary analysis by fitting an interaction term between the flexible working among couples and their income ratio. Yet I did find that the women's inequality by using flexible working arrangement is more pronounced if their earning power is much lower than their husbands. I think this is consistent. And secondly, in terms of the child care, so there is a variable, but during analysis, I find that because my sample only includes employed people, and so then within the couples, both husband and wife must be employed, and then I find that by defining sample in this way, I need to exclude a lot of cases where, for example, only husband work and their wives are staying at home, and then I feel that the sample size is not very sufficient because I did analysis and find that none of the coefficient is significant. So and I can look at so in more detail, and in terms of the number of tasks, and do you mean that so I just ended all the tasks to construct a variable that, for example, how many specific tasks that you are mainly responsible for?
Seems like that. And so usually sometimes a couple will divide up the tasks, the housework by the number of tasks. So you take care of shopping, I take care of repairs and something like that. And so sometimes, of course, the division itself is very gendered.
Yes. I think this is very useful suggestion. I'll definitely try it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Wutsen. So Tanshin, sorry to keep you waiting.
Actually, I have the same question with Dr. Mu. That is on the child-related part. Because in your findings, you find that even the husband taking the flexible arrangement, that they did not engage more on household tasks. So I'm wondering, there's another big section on the unpaid labor within the household, that is childcare. I think the question is exactly the same with Dr. Mu. And so if so, my last question is that I would like to hear what's your suggestions, or what are your ideas about how to make the housework division more gender equality, in terms of even though those are feminine, or some tasks are feminine and some tasks are masculine, so how we can balance this gender division of household tasks.
Yeah, okay, thank you for your question.
You also have a question from Eric. Do you want to take the question together?
Okay, okay, it's fine.
No, go ahead and address that. It's fine.
Okay, yeah. So so for Nanxun's question in terms of how to reduce the gender inequality, I think this is very challenging. I think it's more policy related one, and I think now the current so I think the biggest challenge is so it's still persistent traditional gender role ideology within family, and I think we made a lot of progresses at the in organization, company, workplace, but we're still lag behind in the family level. I think so. It's required. So I think so the more education, or it also require more policy to improve women's status and power. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the talk. I think it's good. I mean, it's important, interesting data, interesting analysis, especially given that, post-COVID, there's a lot of talk about continuing these sorts of things. I had one very small just clarification question, and then a bigger sort of question. The clarification one was that you said something, I didn't quite catch it, but it sounded like what you said was that when there are flexible hour arrangements, that you don't find these effects, but you do find them when there's flexible work arrangements, right? Which, and I understand, I think, how that's different, that flexible hours just means you can come in earlier or later during the day or something like that. And flexible work arrangements are like you can work from home. Is that correct? And did I hear you correctly? I'm just curious about that.
Yes, and I find it's so actually at the beginning I divided this 3 types of flexible working arrangement, and I find the pattern mainly applies to reduced hour arrangement and also the flexible place, that is working from home. And in other words, so the only flexible time and has nothing to do and has no effect on this gender inequality.
Right. Anyway, I thought that's kind of interesting. I'm actually not sure what the implications are. However, I maybe have to think about it. I guess what I was thinking about in listening to the talk, and then it kind of did come up, gave your interpretation of the findings, was that I was thinking about this because it's sort of presented, it can be presented, you didn't do this too much, but you can be presented that sort of the flexible work arrangements are kind of the problem, right? If you put in flexible work arrangements, then the outcome is going to be that you're going to have increasing gender inequality in terms of housework, and then also the assumption that I think sort of there's a tendency, I would say, for people in academia and stuff to say that's a bad outcome, right? And we can talk about sort of what it means in terms of gender inequality or fairness or justice and so forth. But the argument that you made, but you also said, so you can say maybe it's the policy is sort of driving it. But then I was wondering about the issue where you said that you said that it could be the issue of gender ideology, persistent gender ideology, persistent ideas that, you have different people who have different senses of, some people very strongly committed to traditional ideas of, you know, housework being women's work, productive work being men's work, and so on, right? And you said that this was particularly among men. I'm not sure if this is a question, but it's a that it was men's gender ideology driving this. But I really wonder, though, like how you can exclude women's gender ideology, because again, well, I'll just say, from a very personal experience, I happen to be married to someone who has consistently throughout her life prioritized sort of family over career, working all her life, but doesn't, you know, is not pursuing career like advancement and stuff. And it's always been, but that's not, I mean, anyway, I'm not trying to sort of say me, good or bad guy, but I'm just saying, like, I personally have like sort of supported her in like, okay, those are the choices you want to make. That's what's important to you. Fine, I support that, right? But it's sort of been, so it's like women's gender ideology can play a big part in this, right? And I also think there's a, I was just sort of thinking about this. I think there's an issue of gender bias actually among the research community, because in a certain way, the research community, all the people here at work on the Zoom are sort of a self-selected group of like men and women who have sort of committed to research careers and productive labor and so forth, right? So like the voice of those women, especially the men, maybe like we've got a mix of some traditionalists and some whatever here, but like the women in this group are sort of self-selected to be those who've sort of chosen to pursue research careers. Fortunate for all of us, right? But what's not here is the women who have self-selected to choose to commit to family, right, over careers, etc., or at least they're probably underrepresented among the research community and people thinking about and analyzing this. So I'm just wondering, like, what you can do, what could you do to sort of try to get at that? And I thought it's also interesting that you said that the analysis of the relative earnings is that women with lower earnings are also not, or what, are more affected, right? And again, it just struck me that, like, again, just from personal experience, right? Like, again, my wife has lower earnings because she's sort of chosen consistently that path, right? And so that would make sense that, like, there are women who are choosing, like, okay, I have a flexible work arrangement and I'm going to go, you know, do housework, take care of children and stuff. And that's why I'm taking advantage of that, right? Anyway, those are just some comments.
Thank you so much.
Whatever.
Thank you so much for your personal experience.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I add to what Eric was saying?
Yeah.
Actually, from what Eric is saying, the ideology can be at a societal level too, right? Because there's research that compares different welfare regimes, and in the conservative regimes in Western Europe, they intentionally have such kinds of policies to allow flexible work, in that case, and more part-time kind of work, so that women can continue to work while attending to a family and putting in more hours to do that, because they want to conserve that gender roles in society.
Yes.
In your case, is a UK sample, and I think the research on this is that the UK is somewhere in between, so it's kind of unsurprising. So in a way, the policy is doing what it's meant to do, to allow women to contribute more at work while they work. To contribute more in the family while they work.
Yeah. So yes, thank you so much for comments. And as you said, so the UK's policy, actually UK is not a very welfare state, especially compared to the Scandinavian countries. So in the UK, so there's relatively still traditional gender division. Yes.
Pook.
Okay. I think I just want some clarification questions, follow on what Eric and Irene had raised. I wonder, did you look into like industry that husband and wife is in? I wonder if, the particular occupation or industry that they work in might contribute to or aggravate the gender inequality, even with flexible work arrangements. And, Another question is more measurement. like how, and I might have missed it in your presentation, how do people report contribution to housework? Because there's always tendency, right, for men to over report their contribution, I think. So how does that work, and how does your analysis try to sort of mitigate these potential biases? Thanks.
Okay, so your first question is about occupation and industry. So this is a very interesting point, and maybe in certain occupation, maybe it also depends on the gender segregation, the gender ratio in certain occupation, and may have a quite different impact and on the effects of flexible working arrangements. And I will definitely have a look. And in terms of the
there's also, you know, self-selection, right, into particular industry. Like if some people wants to be, I don't know, I mean, I'm talking about American context. People choose to be a teacher because it's more flexible and there's summer and things like that. Right? Instead of being a lawyer.
Yes. And self-selection is another issue, but so I think it's very difficult to resolve the problem. And for the measurement, so the housework hours is basically based on their self-reported housework hour for wife and husband.
So each report separately.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you. Very interesting work.
Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Dr. Who?
Hi.
Hello.
I thank you for your presentation. I have two questions. The first question is also kind of related to children and children-generated housework. So I'm wondering if it's possible in your analysis to segregate the sample into two, like those with young children, preschool children at home, and those without. Whether the relationships you have found will differ across these two subsamples.
Okay.
And my second question is about your understanding and measurement of these flexible work arrangements. And specifically, I'm curious about two categories. One is the reduced hours, and which you found has a significant impact.
Yes.
And the second one is the both husband and wife are not adopting any of those flexible work arrangements. I think in the first category, the reduced hours category, there could be people who they choose to pursue part-time jobs so that they can balance their work and family. And there are also people who are not able to find a full-time job. So I think maybe the dynamics will be different. And for the second category, both husband and wife, they are not using flexible working arrangements. This category, I think that there's a large group of people who are involved in what we call precarious work. So they have these different shifts. They have no control over their work hours and which days they can go to work. So I'm just wondering how this group, these couple dynamics will play out in this group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your suggestion. So the first suggestion is to divide the divide the sample by whether they have a young children. I think this is very helpful suggestion. And for your second comment about the reduced hours. And also about the distinction with precarious working. I think you're right. Actually, you're right. That flexible. Some of the flexible working are very similar to the precarious work, and in this data sets, actually, we're not able to fully distinguish them. And as you mentioned, some people, they may not able to find a full-time job and then they end up working a part-time work. But for the flexible working, in theory, we define it as employees, so they have the right, they have opportunity to decide how much they want to work. But this is the ideal case. So in the data set, so they were just asked whether they are working on the following arrangements. So they so then the survey did not provide more detailed clarifications. Yeah, I think you're right. And yeah, so I think it's important to do more work to distinguish different kinds of flexible working in terms of their purpose. And actually, there is some research, they distinguish flexible working arrangement from the employer-centered flexible working arrangement and employee-centered. For the employer-centered, they are more refers to many precarious employment because they will benefit employers. And for the employee-centered, so they are more like flexible working or working from home to benefit employees. Yeah, so I think this is a very important suggestions, and it's very important and promising area in the future research. Thank you.
Sorry,
yeah.
please.
Yeah. Actually, so for one comment proposed by Mu Zheng, and I have also one question. She proposed that to look at the gender ratio, individual income ratio. Actually, I've conducted some analysis, but I still have some questions and inquiries. For example, in the previous research, so people, for example, can simply calculate the ratio. For example, women's income divided by men's income. And so this is one possibility. And so there are many other alternative ways to calculate the relative earning capacity. And what's your suggestion?
I think it seems that now your way, like to account for both the family income, to control for the class effects as well as the racial. Like from my take, probably it's the best in that it is account for the absolute level as well as the relatives, right?
Okay.
I think Hu Shu probably also has some comments on that.
In terms of how to include relative income.
Yeah,
I think that's really a challenging question. That Mu Zheng and I faced this issue in our research on housework division as well, because sometimes the income data is not so complete. Like in some of the Chinese survey, if the residents are considered farmers, then some of their income information is really missing. And then, so I don't really have a good advice here.
I think that based on like our experience, I think your current controls are good. It just actually occurred to me, like related to the relative SES, and so a related issue is actually about wealth. And so it is possible, for example, like even though this husband or this wife are taking flexible arrangements and earn less, but it is possible that they are like making a wealth for the household. And so in terms of power, they may still be more powerful. So like it's probably possible also to look at some of those like property or wealth ownership and how that divided between the couple. And also related to my last comment on the like division across tasks. I think one way to empirically approach that possibly could, by, for example, multinomial, just like whether or not, for example, it is more likely for husband who take flexible hours to get engaged in feminine tasks or the other way around. And so like you may experiment with both this or just a division of number of tasks, but the latter might be unreliable given this this ratio may just among this 4 or 5 tasks. So yeah, multinomial might be a possibility.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Yeah.
Since nobody else is asking a question, can I take the opportunity to ask one question myself? So when thinking about the longitudinal nature of your data set, if I'm not wrong, your data set actually runs from early 2000s, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
To late 2020.
Yeah, it's 2012. Yeah, or yeah, 2010. Yeah.
And the age range is actually quite large, right? Is it 18 to 49?
No, 18 to 65.
65. Okay.
Yeah.
So my question was that kind of relating to some of the other comments about looking at what the consequences and implications for women and well-being. I was thinking that another way that you could add maybe as a kind of way of talking about implications, maybe as some kind of additional section of additional analysis, is using the data not as a fixed effects, not to run through a fixed effects model, but looking at it as a trajectory.
Yeah.
So when women do flexible work hours, what happens to their career? What happens to them? Do they continue to stay in this flexible work hours job with lower level earnings? And when men do flexible work hours, do they, manage to go to a higher position? And this is, related, of course, to the fact that we see that when women do flexible work arrangements, they do more housework. They do more household tasks. Yeah. This also speaks to what you were saying, women do it for different reasons, right? From men.
Oh, okay.
And with consequences. Yeah. So, like for example, in Singapore, we actually have evidence of occupational segregation that explains our gender pay gap. So this is something that I thought may help to kind of just illustrate how important this subject is.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think this is very important and very interesting suggestion. And by looking at the trajectory, then we can have a more rich story to tell about the consequences of flexible working arrangement on their housework hours and also on their career. Yeah, thank you.
So much for everyone for joining us for this session. As you can see, it's been a really lively discussion because this is a subject that speaks to many of us, I guess, on individual levels. So thank you once again, Dr. Hua, for presenting this amazing research. And thank you everyone for participation today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.